Ohio State is going to have one of the best wide receiver rooms in the country again. It's going to have possibly the best running back tandem in the country again in 2024. Well, actually, I shouldn't say again. Nothing really. This is kind of unprecedented. Trevian Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, what they're doing with that. Offensive line coming along. Quarterback, obviously, they know they have a lot of options there. So it begs the question, how crucial is tight end development for Ohio State this spring and into the offseason for the 2024 season? Will Kazmarek comes in from Ohio. You've got G. Scott back. You've got Jelani Thurman back. You've got some other guys back and in the mix. Andrew, just how critical do you think this is, finding a solution, probably a 2 or 3 person solution for this position by the time we get to August?
I think it's bigger than maybe people realize. And I kind of, you map this out and you're like, okay, well, they got great running backs. And the receivers, I mean, they're Ohio State receivers. Everybody kind of shrugs, we don't need to throw to the tight ends. We got Jeremiah Smith coming in. We got, Emeka Egbuka coming back. We got all these great, we got Carnell Tate coming back. Like, I get it. But I think in practice, it's actually going to be very important to have 2 or 3 guys that you can rely on pretty significantly. Because one, if this team is going to run the ball a little bit more with the running backs you have, you need those guys to step up. So that might not be, a situation where you can only just throw one tight end. You need to have good blocking at tight end. But 2, if you're going to run the offense that we kind of think they might run with Will Howard at quarterback, where it's a lot of rollouts, maybe there's going to be think about it, just there's going to be some RPO plays where the tight end's going to hit the flat, and you just need somebody in that role that you can trust. And I think that that's the number one thing that I would probably describe as this tight end room. You need trust out of this room. You don't need anybody to go out there and beat Brock Bowers. You don't need anybody to go out there and be Sam Laporta or Michael Mayer or any of these other great tight ends that have come through college in these last couple of years. You just need safety valves. But if you don't have a safety valve, I actually think that could be really negative for this offense. So I think it's kind of a sneaky need. It's not going to be the biggest part of this offense or anything like that, but you got to have people that you can trust on this offense, and I think that's the big part of development right now.
Obviously, I think if we were to ask Ryan Day, he would say this is hugely important. I know he would. So would Keenan Bailey, and I'm not saying it's not, but do you agree? Is this a big spring and a big offseason for this tight end group?
Sure, but I don't think they have to have necessarily the production that we've seen from the tight ends the last couple of years. Just be able to block and don't get your butt whipped, which we've seen enough G. Scott over the last couple of years. I think he's a decent blocker. He's not the greatest blocker in tight end history, but he's good enough that I didn't feel like he was getting his butt whipped last year. Will Kazmarek, he's got some things on film that he's flashed his ability to block. Can he come up a level? And then Jelani Thurman's just kind of sticking out there, man, and what's that going to turn into over the next 6 months here? But from a production standpoint, they needed Kate Stover to be that the last couple of years here because of injuries, right? If you're telling me this is probably the deepest wide receiver room that Brian Hartline has had in a while in terms of who might play on Saturday, if you're telling me this is the best running back tandem that we've seen in the Ryan Day era, maybe in a long time at Ohio State. You might have to go back to the Jim Tressel era when you're talking about running back tandems that are this good. And you're telling me that at worst, the quarterback play is third team All Big Ten, but I think it might be a higher ceiling than that with one of these guys. Then, just be able to block. Don't mess up in the blocking game. And I don't have any concerns about that. So I don't think it's a need because it's where when you're trying to poke holes in this offense, it's where the hole is. But I don't think it's a wide enough hole to where they get on the field with Michigan and we get to the end of that game. It's like, oh, they lost to Michigan because the tight ends weren't good enough.
Yeah, I mean, you can go back to 2021, which is where this offense sort of peaked in terms of yards per play. They led the nation yards per play. I think it was almost 8 yards per play. They led it again in 2022, but 2021 was the peak, and the tight end receiving production that year was modest. It was good. Jeremy Ruckert had a good year. Cade Stover was coming on. That was kind of his big bridge year into being the starter. But I think that proved that if you use all those other weapons right in the passing game, and that was, by the way, when Trevian Henderson was more of a threat out of the backfield as a receiver than he has been in any of the years since. So I think if you get back to that, I thought some of what Cade Stover did the last couple of years, as far as how much usage he got, was a reflection of, for whatever reason, they got away from using the backfield as receivers as much. And if you get back to that, which they definitely can with Henderson and Judkins and the other options that they have there, I think that replicates and makes up for some of the receiving production if that's not there as much. But you're both right in terms of the blocking. The blocking is critical. All these things that Ohio State fans want to see from the running game, who's setting the edge with that? A lot of times it's the tight ends. Who is out leading blocks sometimes? It's the tight ends. Who is doing critical things sometimes even in pass protection. They're not always going out on routes. Tight ends are involved with that. Ryan Day loves being multiple on offense. He loves going 12 personnel, 13 personnel in goal line situations. That's not something he dreamed up. It's pretty common, but like those formations are there for a reason because they're very effective in those situations. And you can talk to Keenan Bailey today, and you can see that I think he likes where this can go. It's just a matter of getting to September and having three guys you can count on in that backfield. So trust is probably a good word for it that Andrew brings up. Like, do they get to September and have three guys that they trust on the field for goal line situations? Certainly by the time you get 5-6 games into this and you have to go to Oregon and this game might be riding on one possession down around the goal line, do you have the three guys on the field that you trust? And that's part of this offseason. As it keeps rolling on, we're going to keep bringing you the text, 614-350-3315. Student Appreciation Scrimmage on Saturday. We'll be here. We'll be watching. We'll be listening. Everything we see and hear from cleveland.com coming to you at that number. And we'll be talking about it extensively on Buckeye Talk, wherever you can find podcasts.